As we look back on the last year and a half that the division has been in existence, it has gone through 7 major content releases, and with Update 1.8 set to launch somewhere in mid-December, I thought it would be interesting to take a look at the past 7 updates and touch on the highs and lows of each content release. Each update brought new content and meta changes, and although they were not all met with universal praise from the community, they have all contributed in some way, shape, or form to where we are now. So, without further delay, let's jump right into episode 2 of this series and take a quick look back at Update 1.2. What's going on, agents? It's LtBuzzLitebeer, and in today's Division video, I decided to take a trip into the past of my beloved Tom Clancy title and touch on some of the changes that Update 1.2 brought to the live game. This is episode 2 of this series, and in case you missed episode 1, where I reviewed Update 1.1, I will leave a link in the video description below. Just 1 month after Update 1.1, Update 1.2, better known as Conflict, went live on May 24th, 2016 and unveiled many new features. The Clear Sky Incursion went live in this update and required players to be at rank 30 and featured both hard and challenge difficulties. This incursion was built around the premise that the Rikers have seized one of the anti-aircraft sites abandoned by the Last Man Battalion. With control of this site, they controlled the entire Manhattan airspace and are taking possession of the supply drops. The mission starts with the Rikers shooting down a JTF aircraft, which they then seize and use the defenses mounted on the aircraft to drop mortars and direct turret fire on your position. 4 new gear sets were added to the game, including Final Measure, Hunter's Faith, Lone Star, and Predator's Mark. The 2-piece Final Measure bonus proved useful for the 50% exotic damage resilience, and Predator's Mark quickly became a favorite of PvPers in the Dark Zone for the bleed effect and speed reduction it inflicted on opposing players. Search and destroy missions were added in the safe houses and rewarded successful completions with target intel. Once you had enough intel, you could unlock and select high-value target missions at the base of operations, and these came in either daily or the harder weekly variety. The Dark Zone received 3 major changes in Update 1.2 in hijack extractions, sealed caches, and a player stash now being located in Dark Zone checkpoints. The hijack mechanics added another level of tension to extractions, as you simply couldn't add your loot to the extraction line and run away, as now another agent had the ability to come to your extraction and cut the rope containing your loot. Named and elite bosses in the DZ could now drop sealed caches that contained mystery items, but would first need to be extracted before a player could open them. The player stash proved to be extremely useful in the DZ checkpoints, as players were no longer required to return to the base of operations to manage and view the gear they had extracted from the DZ. The new Isaac assignments were introduced as weekly missions and were only available to players at level 30, and rewarded a player who completed the mission with exclusive vanity items. New high-end weapons were added to the game during this update, which included the Hungry Hog M60 light machine gun, Centurion M1911 pistol, Medved Saiga 12-gauge shotgun, and Historian M1A marksman rifle. In addition, the showstopper AA-12 full auto shotgun was coded into the game, but would not be available to be acquired by players until Update 1.3. Many general updates and game changes were implemented in Update 1.2, which included adding a 201 plus gear score bracket, raised the armor damage mitigation cap up to 75%, replaced the health stat above the stamina score with toughness, which was a combination of both, raised the Phoenix credit cap from 1,000 to 2,000. The second bonus on performance mods was significantly increased, and the DZ extraction departure timer once the helicopter arrives was increased up to 60 seconds. In addition, many modifications were made to minimum loot drops and loot balancing for missions and incursions, as well as bosses in the Dark Zone. A new DZ bracket for GearScore 201 Plus was added that featured tougher NPCs ranging from level 32 to 34 that provided better rewards. Also featured in Update 1.2 were many bug fixes that centered around weapon and gear talents, including Reckless, where it would reduce incoming damage instead of increase it, Balanced, which would stay procced indefinitely, Brutal, where the damage was multiplicative instead of additive, One is None, which would cause the weapon to jam if the magazine was down to one bullet, and the Specialized Backpack talent, which wouldn't add the bonuses once equipped. Bugs were fixed with the Path of the Nomad, Tactician's Authority, and Sentry's Call gear sets, as well as a host of minor fixes and adjustments, including several to the Falcon Lost incursion. Overall, my impressions for Update 1.2 were one of general interest, but less excitement than Update 1.1. The Clear Sky incursion, while slightly more sophisticated than Falcon Lost, felt like more of the same horde mode mechanics with planting bombs. Other than Predator's Mark, the other three gear sets were underwhelming, and the new high-end weapons that were added as part of this update were disappointing. The new Search and Destroy missions, which led to HVT missions, were interesting at first, but I can clearly remember being rewarded with nothing but Lone Star gear over and over again, which was disappointing to say the least. The Isaac missions were quite simple, and the exclusive vanity items we received for completing these assignments was far too similar to other standard vanity items we already had. The changes to the Dark Zone were the most interesting portion of this update, as the new hijack mechanic was fun to try from time to time. The sealed caches that we can now loot from DZ bosses and elites were a nice addition, as was the player stash being added to DZ checkpoints. Overall, I remember grinding to max out my gear score level, which was raised to 204 for weaponry and 240 for gear. Clear Sky was hit or miss depending on the other members of your squad, and could lead to you getting frustrated very quickly if you were matched up with other players who had never made it past the first horde mode bomb planting section of this mission. SMGs were still the weapon of choice for most agents, and the M1A was still the clear favorite amongst marksman rifles, with the first wave variety being the most sought after. And finally, I remember purchasing a 204 gear score AUG from the vendor and proudly running into combat with that sexy looking beast of an SMG. This is going to wrap up episode 2 of this quick look back on the history of the Division's updates, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this look into the past. If you could take the time to rate the video with a huge thumbs up, it would be greatly appreciated. If you want some more of my Division content in your lives, please take the time to hit the sub button and follow me on Twitter. Until my next Division video, this has been LtBuzzLitebeer saying peace out.